along this afternoon. I know it's lovely and sunny outside, although it's nice and cool in here. And thanks to everyone who's agreed to speak. We've got some really awesome speakers this afternoon. So just to let you know, we are live streaming. We're live streaming on YouTube and also periscoping as well. So don't say anything that you wouldn't want publicly broadcast. And also, if you are speaking, just be aware of any acronyms or things like this that you might need to kind of just let people know. So that people outside of the OU are in the loop. So just to let you know what's happening this afternoon, for the first bit of today, we're going to be hearing from our speakers. We're going to have a series of lightning talks, so people are going to come up and speak for about 5-10 minutes on different topics. So that will kind of take place over the first 45 minutes or so. And then and that will also be live streamed. We'll then be kind of having a discussion about how we kind of move forward in shaping Open at the Open University. So it'll be an opportunity to hear in the first bit about what openness means to everyone's roles, and then kind of looking at how we can kind of shape Open at the OU. So without further ado, I'm going to... Sorry, oh yes, sorry, Baya's reminding me that we are taking photos as well, so if you don't want your photo taken, then please do indicate that. And a big hello to everyone on the live stream, because I know we do have people here. So without further ado, I'm going to kick things off with openness in the OU Library, how the library is supporting openness at the OU, with Nicola and Dan.
Okay, thanks very much everyone. My name's Nicola Dowson and I head up the library research support team, and I'm here with Dan Crane, who's one of our research support librarians, and as Beck said, we want to give an overview of how the library is supporting openness at the OU. So academic libraries traditionally have paid for and provided access to third-party content. Over the last couple of decades there's been a shift to providing access to online resources, which facilitates making content available to a wider audience. Since 2012, with the publishing of the Finch Report, there's been a driver within the UK to make research outputs open access, and alongside this, funders have been implementing open access policies. These have acted as a driver to openness, bringing both challenges and opportunities for libraries. There's been a growth in hybrid journals that offer both open access content and content that can only be accessed via subscription, or readers have to pay to view it. Evaluating content and making it discoverable is an ongoing role of libraries. So as an example, the OU Library includes open access content in our discovery tools and supports open access initiatives through memberships of the Directory of Open Access Journals, Open Book Publishers and the Open Library of the Humanities. Alongside providing access to open content, the OU Library has also developed tools to help researchers manage their research profile and disseminate their research outputs. So Open Research Online, the OU's institutional repository, is now 15 years old, and as part of this service we interpret and manage embargo requirements from commercial publishers. A study in 2014 of open access papers carried out by the Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden found that self-archived articles in an institutional repository had a 22% higher citation rate. So that's a really driver for people pulling their publications on institutional repositories. Alongside institutional repositories, subject repositories offer an alternative to making available publications open access and are widely used in some disciplines. One of the challenges we face in libraries is how to make institutional repositories as relevant to researchers as a subject repository. Last year we launched Open Research Data Online, which is the OU's research data repository, and we're encouraging people to put their research data up there and make it available. The OU Digital Archive was launched about a year ago and offers a selection of fully searchable material from the OU's rich historical teaching and research output. These services enable us to preserve and provide access to a wide range of OU outputs. Over the last few years, in the library, we've been trying to raise the profile of open access by holding events during Open Access Week and including open access in our training programme. This year we've added a session on social media for scholarly communication as part of our research visibility strand, and as we're often asked about sharing research outputs on ResearchGate and academia.edu. I see the library's role as advocating the benefits of openness to the OU community, enabling researchers to decide how open they want to be and what they need to do to actually achieve this. Dan's now going to just give a bit more detail around the tools and services we provide to support openness at the OU.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Nicola said, I'm going to speak a little bit more about the sort of services we provide as a library team, with the aim of giving researchers as much help as possible in order to make their research openly available. So I'm going to flip on here to sort of the two tools we have that Nicola outlined before. So we've got Open Research Online, or ORO as we often refer to it, and Open Research Data Online, or ORDO as we refer to that. And these are places where we can make research outputs such as papers, sort of journal articles, conference papers, book chapters and so on available in ORO. And then research data either supporting particular publications or at the end of a project available on ORDO. So we've got those two tools in order to help people make as much sort of range of content available as possible. So ORO, as Nicola said, has been established for about 15 years. It's very well used both within the university for people to put their material on there and from researchers accessing it either directly through ORO or coming across it to a search which leads them to the results in ORO. There are sort of over 30,000 items in there already. I think in the last year we had about 1 million downloads, so it's well used from both sides. And across the sort of disciplines within the university, from sciences to arts and so on. So it's very well used. And in there you'll find copies of material that may be available elsewhere. So perhaps green open access copies of papers available on a publisher's site, but also material that's not available elsewhere. For example, copies of theses that won't be available anywhere else electronically, perhaps. So there's a whole range of content there, and it's well used and well established. ORDO is a very new service which was introduced last year, which we established, and that's, as I said, to let people put their research data online and make it available. So it will preserve it for at least 10 years. It will give people a data site DOI in order to make it trackable and auditable and citable, and helps them preserve it for the long term. We could also limit access if you want to, so if you had a confidential or sensitive set of data, you could put a record there so people could know that it existed, but not necessarily allow access to it if you wanted to control it in that way. So why do we do it? As Nicola said, funder requirements have been a big driver in order to make things open. So we want to help people to comply with those and to demonstrate compliance to the university and to funders. But obviously within those funded mandates are the benefits to society and researchers generally of making things open, and that's something we try to emphasise as well as the element of compliance. So the benefit to the public good of people being able to access this research, the benefits to the research process of sort of efficiencies and reproducibility and transparency, and the benefits to the individual researchers of getting their work more exposure, more impact as well. So we try and emphasise these things as well. So in summary, we sort of try and provide the mechanisms for people to make their work openly available in these repositories. We give guidance sort of through our website and one-to-one, and in any way people want to come and ask us, we try and help people understand the landscape and how they can work with it. We give training, as Nicola said, on open access and on social media to help raise your profile, and on research data management, where you can sort of plan to share your data throughout the research process, so it's not just at the end when you're thinking about doing that. We also have a blog called The Orb where people can sign up, and where we try to disseminate any information we get about keeping up to speed with developments in scholarly communications and openness in general. So we try and spread the word in that way as well. So that's us, that's what we do, and thanks very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dan and Nicola. Moving on, we've got Anna, who's going to talk to us about opening educational practice beyond the OU, open platform and practices. Thanks, Anna.
to you a little bit about the work I've been involved in the last 3 years on an open educational practices project at the OU, and how this has been enabling open platform development, as well as encouraging external users to do open. The Opening Educational Practices in Scotland project has been going on for 3 years and is actually just about to finish. But it's basically been founded on the premise that there is a lot that we could be doing to actually share, and Scotland had a good reputation already for trying to share things openly. And what we've been doing in the project is working with partners to create open online courses, and also we've been doing some further development to Open Learn Create, which is the sister platform to Open Learn. So these are some of the organisations that OOPS has been working in partnership with. We've actually been working with about 60 different organisations, which is quite a lot. Not all of them to the same level, but we've been exploring with them what their needs are, and working with them on their expertise to work out whether open education is actually relevant to their work and whether they can make use of it. It's certainly challenged our thinking quite a lot, because reusing existing OER, which is what we initially thought might be useful to some people, is actually not what they were after. They were more interested in sharing their own expertise, and so needed help with creating OER for their particular group of users. So we have been doing that with some of those organisations. And we've worked through various models over the last 3 years of guiding them through the whole process of creating courses. And what we ultimately were working towards is making it that they do most of the work themselves, and that we provide the guidance and perhaps also some additional services. Because what the Yukes Project has done is actually helped with the building of courses in a lot bigger way than shows on that diagram, because that's the aspirational diagram. As a lot of the work has been basically using their experience and expertise, but we've done a lot of the building with them. Now it's a case of encouraging them on to do some of the building themselves. So in the future, it might be a case of, for other projects coming along and wanting to work with external people, it's what services can you provide to show people how to do open education and practice. And there's advice and guidance up there on the Yukes Hub, which will continue after the project, although it won't be maintained, and also lots of advice and guidance on the Open Learn Create site as well. Now, the Open Learn Create site, which the Yukes project has been helping to fund the further development of it, is the sister site to Open Learn. It started out as lab space, it became Open Learn Works, and it's now Open Learn Create. And it's where anyone can publish open content. And some of that content can be created by us and put up there, and with additional features and functionality, or just anyone can go and just use the Moodle functionality that's already there. And it's got tools for content redevelopment and collaboration and reuse and remixing. And one of the new features is that people can create their own collections of courses. That used to be something that only we could do on their behalf. And further redesign and guidance and functionality is coming on the platform. So you'd say, well, why would I use Open Learn Create when the OU's got Open Learn? Well, Open Learn is for OU courses. Open Learn Create can be for OU and partnership projects, or for external people just using it themselves. And then, of course, there's Future Learn, where other organisations put their MOOCs. But MOOCs have a very particular pattern to them. And the thing about Open Learn Create is that you can have materials there that are open perpetually, whereas on Future Learn you can't. So that's just the difference between what you can do with the different platforms. And what we've got on offer on Open Learn Create now is that you can create your own basic DIY course using the Moodle-only functionality, or you can ask us to build you a course, and the Open Media and Informal Learning area at the OU will do that for you. I mean, it creates the box already for Open Learn. Or you could have open or closed cohorts. We do have some organisations who are actually using the site for closed cohorts and materials that were OU materials, but they wanted to issue them to their particular group of students and monitor their progress. and for particular reasons they didn't want the world and its dog to see that actually they've got the course there. The site also offers badged courses. In fact, it was doing it a little bit before OpenLearn was doing it. And it also has optional statement of participation. You can have collections of courses on OpenLearn Create. And we do have one portal site so far which is currently being redesigned, and that's OpenLearn Cymru. But that takes quite a lot more to build because it involves design and rebuilding costs. And there's further developments coming on OpenLearn Create as well. Coming up very shortly, the course pages will be improved to look much more like OpenLearn, because at the moment they still look very, very Moodle, which I'm sure some people think, oh no, I don't like it looking like that. And we're also bringing in a new feature called an article, where you can actually create a standalone article which is not embedded within a course. It's literally just an article that could be in your collection if you want it to be, or just a standalone. And then we've improved the statement of participation as well, because it was very basic on the site. And then later on there will be proper Moodle stats and data dashboard, because at the moment getting to various different bits of data about your course is quite a long-winded procedure. And later on there will also be guide and handbook functionality on the site, so that you can actually say this is a guide rather than a course. And eventually we will have the Open Create tool on it as well, which the OU is developing, which is a direct authoring tool. So there's various plans for OpenLearn Create to make it even better than it already is. And we want to integrate the profile with OpenLearn as well, because at the moment they're two separate profiles, and the OpenLearn Create one is pretty bad at the moment. But as you can see, OpenLearn Create has quite a few badged courses already, and that collection is growing as we speak, because there are more due to be published very shortly. So it's a good place to actually go and experiment and try things out. And it's been really interesting working on this project, and I'm going to continue working on OpenLearn Create after the Yukes project finishes, because they've given me the job of carrying on making sure the developments happen, which is really good. So there's a lot more to come. So there you go.
Thanks, Anna. That's great. Okay. Next up, it's Tim with From Theory to Practice, an Open Educational Journey. Thanks, Tim.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Okay, yeah, I'm Tim Seal. I work in the International Development Office here at the Open University. And I'm going to talk to you about From Theory to Practice. And it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to sort of give a bit of a personal journey, personal overview of my work in openness at the OU. And in fact, I was just reflecting on this morning and was thinking actually I should have called it From Practice to Theory to Practice, but maybe we'll go through a little bit of that as we go on. Okay, so my journey at the Open University started really when I, in 2010, 2011, when I started working for a project called SCORE, which was the Support Centre for Open Resource and Education. And up to that point, I've been working in education technology and learning loosely for about 15 years. And I had really quite strong held beliefs around access and sharing and what that means to people and openness. But I never really had a good argument or a framework by which I could sort of articulate this. I just knew that it was good to share, and you know, everyone should be given access, and actually when you start doing these things, good things can happen. But I didn't really have a framework to sort of really understand what I thought about that. So as I say, I started working at SCORE, and SCORE was a HEFCE funded project over 3 years. It ran alongside the UK OER programme, if you're aware of that programme, and it was really aimed at supporting the increase in uptake of open educational resources for OER, and doing that around developing and supporting higher education institutions in England to develop policy, to create more OER. They'd run events and workshops to support that, as well as a formal fellowship programme. But there were 3 particular things that SCORE did which had a particular impact on my engagement with openness. And that was around a short-term fellowship programme that was run where we brought practitioners into the university and worked with them over a series of a week to develop projects or policies or create open courses, a huge range of different activities people wanted to engage with. We'd do that over the series of a week, and then we'd keep coming back to them and reports and support them further. So we did that through a number of programs, and engaged I think over 50 people in that, and that was a real sort of beginning of me being able to support people in open access and open policies. There was also a conference we ran, the 2012 OER conference, so OER 12, and we ran that in collaboration with the Open Courseware Consortium. And this was really great because actually this opened it up to a more global audience. So we had people from across the world engaging with us in 5 days in Cambridge. And again, this just supported me and my understanding further in being able to have those conversations with people in countries far apart. And the third bit, which I think we'll be talking about possibly around this year of open celebrations, is the Paris Declaration. So we're involved in supporting that and getting people to sign up to that, and quite actively involved in getting that translated as well, very quickly into other languages. So I had a really great experience in that sense. But what it really did for me was brought through this sort of global and UK almost networking piece for me, around me being able to develop a framework for understanding what the arguments were and then pass that on to other people. And so it might sort of seem quite obvious, but the more I became engaged, the more I'd be talking about things and supporting people. And the more I did that work, the more that people asked me to come and talk and support their projects in what they wanted to do in terms of openness or technology and how technology can be used in open ways. And this led on to some work with the International Development Office here at the Open University. So I've been working a little bit with them on the fringes of things they were doing, but in 2012 I had a much bigger focus on a project called TESS-India. It stands for Teacher Education and School-Based Support. And this was a project based in India that was about improving the pedagogies that teachers use in teaching and learning, so improving their approaches to teaching and learning. And we built openness into the project from the start, and that was a key part of what we were doing. So we worked in open ways in terms of how we were collaborating, but we also licensed everything openly, as you might expect. We used open source software and open platforms, but we also, and this was a key part, was actually in the production methodologies that we used. We actually engaged openly with an understanding that strategically we need things to be open because we're working across 7 states in India. And what we really wanted to do was take advantage of that so that it could be adapted and contextualised across those 7 states. We actually did that, so really helped, the openness really helped to increase our impact in terms of what we were doing. So this all led on really to work that I was doing in the International Development Office, and actually now as a unit we have our default is open. So any work that we engage in, the first aspect that we talk about is openness. We're going to work with someone, if we're going to engage in a way, we want to engage openly. So that might be just releasing content openly on an open license. That might be restrictive, or more restrictive, but it could be right down to thinking about how we collaborate more openly, how we develop our open methodologies with partners and how they can take that further. And this has been really important because I've seen a real impact in terms of us being able to be more successful in bids that we put forward, because we're able to very easily show sustainability and show wider impact and wider reach. Okay, Joe, just to summarise, so open, what does it mean to me at the OU? Well, I guess being able to speak openly to people without this kind of need for selling, because we can become more successful in our bidding because we show this increased reach and impact, and using tools like you've seen already. So we always automatically publish anything we do to Open Learn Create. Any research we do goes onto OER, so we use all these open platforms that we already have. And for me personally, I guess it's enabled me to have an argument for openness. It's given me a framework in which to talk to, and has really enabled me to have a much wider reach in the work that I do, work globally now, which is great, and I suppose directly to be able to deliver on the Open University's social mission as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. That's great. And next we've got Rick Holliman, Ethics in Knowing, Rationales for Openness. Thanks.
Hello. So I'm based over in the Faculty of Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics, but I tend to do most of my research over in education, so I know a lot of faces in the room. And I'm interested in the kind of cross-fertilisation between openness and engagement. And certainly some of the examples that we've heard already are kind of classic examples of engagement as well as openness in terms of the way that you've worked. So I thought I'd speak a little bit today from a kind of perspective of research to complement what work's been spoken of in terms of the teaching. And it comes down to a question really of how we work as academic scholars. In my case, it's how you do research. In your case, it's how do you teach. And I think in terms of the research perspectives, most researchers start from a kind of perspective of that kind of Socratic wisdom of, we need to examine our lives, do you know what I mean? We can't know everything, yeah? So the question is, where do you go and find solutions to those kind of research challenges? Do we just work in academia and talk to each other in open ways, which is fine? Or do we start to think about different forms of expertise and what they might bring to the party, if you like? And a couple of the examples ready today, I think, have done that. So it's about who we should ask in terms of how we then improve both the research, but also in the kind of current context, the social and economic outputs that might come out of that research. So when I was asked to do this, it immediately made me think, okay, I better go back and read some of Martin's work. So I went back and reread his conclusion to the Battle for Open. And the thing that really struck me from that was he's very interested in the idea of how do we mainstream openness as a kind of concept, so it just runs through everything we do, yeah? It becomes a core for our DNA, if you like. And I think a lot of what we've tried to do in terms of engagement over the last few years kind of is about that kind of mainstreaming, yeah? How do we make this just an aspirational way of working, a routine way of working, which for a lot of people in the room is self-evident. But the question is, how do you then make it an aspirational culture so that it then runs through the whole organisation? Yeah, so we value, recognise and reward the people for doing this stuff well. So that's kind of what I'm interested in. And there's a little research cycle. So I think if we just go back over, so Nicola and Dan, excellent, I actually remember. Yeah, I'm working in this kind of area here of dissemination, and Anna and Tim. Yes. I'm kind of working through the whole phase, do you know what I mean, in terms of how do we open up the practices of how we do our academic work. So in my experience, I tend to focus on kind of three rationales for why this kind of idea is a good thing to do. And this is born out of some work which is at least nearly 30 years old now, from kind of environmental decision making. But it still applies in the sense of how do we kind of mainstream this kind of ideas. And there's three kind of rationales, I think, for doing this. One is thinking of that kind of normative judgment, what should we do? Yeah, so arguments about what's the right thing to do, which in my experience tends to be an answer which is answered by type of people in this room, kind of early adopters, yeah, people who are idealists, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that in life. But when we want to start to mainstream this, we move into the more substantive and instrumental phases, yeah. So the question of what is the best thing to do is answered by Nicola and Dan when they start talking about 22% rise in citations, yeah. That's going to improve your research, yeah. That's a pretty kind of easy argument to make to those kind of second wave, if you like, the pragmatists, yeah. So we've got idealists and we've got pragmatists. But the crucial thing, if you actually want to mainstream this stuff, if you've got to get into the instrumental, which is the kind of nastier bit, do you know what I mean? What's in our self-interest? And that's a kind of harder argument to have. And it's an argument that I've been having over the last 2 or 3 years at the Open University, yeah? So how do we think about what's in the self-interest of the Open University, and how does that map onto the self-interest of all the different component parts of a research project, yeah? Because the self-interest in different places are different things. So at the moment, that's a kind of argument that you can have with middle managers, for example. Yeah, it comes down to allocations for academic workload management, and then what are you going to do with that time? Yeah, it's a kind of pretty kind of straightforward argument in terms of self-interest for your particular unit. So, let's try that. It's died on me. It's died on me, Beck. Let's try that. There we go, sorry. Okay. So I tend to think of this as a kind of mixture of principle and pragmatics. Yeah. So the arguments at the top, are based on some work done by a woman called Marion Fricker, who talked about epistemic injustice. Yeah. And she talks of it in two kind of particular ways. One, she talks about testimonial injustice, so effectively who does and does not have a voice in research. And then she talks about it in terms of hermeneutical injustice. So do we have the kind of concepts to understand what openness in research actually is, both as researchers and then people who might not be non-academics who want to be a part of this kind of agenda? So that question of who should have access to research is crucial, who's excluded is crucial, but then how do we find practices which actually allow us to talk in sensible ways together, in kind of collaborative ways, to actually have that kind of conversation about engaged research. And I'm pretty sure Anna and Tim would have some interesting stories of how they went about that. In terms of the substantive, the question then becomes, will our open practices improve the quality of the research and the impacts? And that's crucial in terms of the current agenda. But more interesting for me, and this is where the kind of agenda about who should be involved in research tallies up with the normative and the substantive, is what forms of expertise could actually enhance the research. So typically, in my experience, normative questions of engaged research tend to focus on the public as an undifferentiated mass, yeah? As long as we put the stuff out there in an open access way, we're okay, yeah? We can all feel virtuous. The question here, really, is about how do we think more specifically, in Mike Michael's terms, about publics in particular? Yeah, what forms of expertise and experience could enhance the research in useful ways? And that, for me, is a much more interesting and nuanced question. And then, crucially, down the bottom here, we end up with an argument about, okay, in the instrumental sense, should we do this, yeah? So the conversations I've had over the last 3 or 4 years with researchers is always, is this going to improve my chances for getting funding? Or crucially, is it going to be to my detriment? And that, I think, is a question which is still a live one within RC UK, and it comes into display every time a panel meets to have a conversation about what types of research they should or should not be funded. And then more interestingly, I suppose, in terms of the kind of bigger picture, it's crucially about what the stakeholders gain from this process. So just an example, I was over at Denby School the other day talking about a project we've done, a partnership we've worked with them over 4 years. And the questions from the governors who I was presenting to was, what's in it for the school? Yeah, you have to give us a kind of justification for that. Either in terms of what the teachers learn, crucially in terms of what the students gain, and that unfortunately always comes back down to our old friend tables, yeah, and grades. But if you don't have those kind of arguments, if you hadn't thought them through, then you're going to struggle to continue the partnership going forwards. Yeah, so that's the kind of crucial question there. You have to take into account, I think, all three of those perspectives to be able to have a convincing argument to say, let's mainstream this, let's put this into the kind of the mainstream of what we do, so it just becomes routine. Okay, so this comes together in a simple kind of definition that we tried to put together about the nature of open engaging research. You go back to the research title at the start of this little presentation. This is basically just it written out in words rather than as a thick. But what we tried to do was work with practitioners, with researchers across the institution to come up with this definition. And the thing which was the most difficult question for us is encapsulated in this little footnote here. Nobody could agree what a public was for engaged research. So if you go into different academic communities, everybody has a different way of conceptualizing this. Some people talk about stakeholder engagement and say, well, it's got nothing to do with public engagement, stakeholder engagement, completely different things. Public patient involvement is a completely different thing to stakeholder engagement or public engagement. And they can compartmentalize these kind of different ideas in different ways. What we tried to do is come up with some way of thinking about how an engaged research paradigm or an open engaging research paradigm could promote epistemic justice across the whole of the institution. So the question then becomes, okay, how do you do this stuff well? I don't think it's that much different to a typical research project, in the sense, we still need to plan carefully, prepare carefully, crucially work with different swarms of expertise to set up bespoke solutions for the type of questions we want to ask. And then it comes back to that notion of, in terms of that kind of Socratic wisdom idea, do you know what I mean? A life unexamined is not worth living. So that kind of notion of reflection and reflexivity in terms of the way you work with these kind of publics is crucial to making openness a success. And that's your lot.
Thanks, Rick. So, next we've got Laura, who's going to talk to us about promoting and supporting the openness of ideas related to open and online learning.
Sorry, obviously there's a long title. Right, okay. As you can see, my name is Laura Hills. I'm an academic here at the Learning, Teaching, Innovation portfolio. I never get it quite right. I'm also have been an educator on a few of the online courses, open online courses that we've produced at the Open University, particularly with a remit for widening participation. So I was one of a group of educators on a Open Learn Badged Open course, which was called Taking Your First Steps into Higher Education. And I was also the lead educator on a Future Learn MOOC, which was Get Started with Online Learning. So in both cases, it's been about encouraging learners who may not have had experience of higher education to consider it. So it's that really that's influenced my sort of talk today, and also what I'm speaking about here, which is the development of a practitioner group. So hopefully, people have had problems with this. I'm hoping this will work. Oh, that's not me.
You've seen that before.
Yeah, how do I? No, can someone help? No, this is very exciting. I'm pressing, you name it, I'm pressing buttons and it's not done. Do you want me to just talk?
Oh,
I'm quite happy to talk. Is it not uploaded?
I apologise.
Yes.
Sorry, you might have to.
Shall I just?
If that's okay, yeah, I apologise.
It's very exciting. Okay. So you have to be open to new opportunities here. Right, okay. So I come from this from two perspectives. First, as an educator, as I've said, I've been involved in various open online courses. And secondly, as an academic developer, which I very much see myself as. When I was involved in developing the two open online courses that we did, I had a background in what it was like to produce courses at the Open University for our distance students. And it suddenly became clear that what we were talking about was a very different beast. Doing an open course is a very different experience for learners. They often have different motivations, and obviously the way the courses look is totally different to the experience of producing courses or modules at the Open University. But what we were doing is that in trying to produce these courses, we were actually operating, I've sort of, in my slides, I sort of called it recycling knowledge. So in other words, we were taking knowledge from here, and then we were trying to apply it in a new situation without having really any understanding of what that meant in practice. And so what I sort of became aware of also was that we were also told, you know, for example, on a badged open course, it is a certain number of weeks with a certain number of hours per week. And so we were trying to sort of grapple with the sort of pedagogical implications of that. Also in terms of badging, what that meant for assessment, you know, how sort of authentic was that assessment going to be? And we had no way of really knowing, because we didn't know what the research said. We didn't know what the sort of the systems issues were, why the systems were in place as they were. And so we often talk about siloisation at the Open University. It was a very good example. So my response to that as an academic developer, which is my sort of second persona, was to try and create a group which would bring those groups of people together. So it was to try and bring together researchers into OERs, to bring together the people who actually are the sort of systems developers, who actually structure things, who actually require the badging to take place at certain with the educators. And originally, this is an example of openness in itself. It was originally called the, I can't remember now, the OER SIG, which was the Open Online Course Special Interest Group. And at our first meeting, we decided we'd be open about the title. And it now has a rather odd term of RIPFOOL, which is Research into Practice for Open and Online Learning. And it's early days still. I wouldn't say we've managed great things, but the idea of the group is to try and encourage a degree of openness about role, so that it doesn't matter whether you're an educator, a researcher, or a systems developer. The idea is that we're trying to improve the learner experience, and that is our key area. And I think it's also open to ideas, so that we learn from each other. We also get a better sense of what the sort of the implications are of research that's going on, but also what the requirements are of the system. Is there any way we can nudge them a little bit, or are they set in stone? Why are they set in stone? So it's creating conversations within the institution. And in my final slide, I was trying to show that in one of the issues is we're open within our group, but one of the problems we face is trying to create that openness more broadly within the university. That often you have to be open to new ideas in order to join these sorts of groups in the first place. And it's trying to sort of generate a sort of sense of openness across the institution, so that we can actually learn from each other more broadly and potentially have a greater impact on how we do things to support our open learners. And that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura, and I'm so sorry about the slides.
That's all right.
Thank you for freestyling and being for working like that. It's great. So, so next we've got Simon Budgeon, who's going to talk to us about from overspill to curation, using open to turn the curious into learners. Thanks, Simon.
I'm not going to try and talk someone else's set of slides, though. That would be a game show too far. So, back in the 1970s when I was a kid, Rod Hull and Emu used to do a spoof TV series, and they used to spoof a lot of TV programmes on it. And one of the things that used to be spoofed was the Open University, which was spoofed as the Open Emuversity. And the joke, such as it was Rod Hull would come out with, I couldn't afford a prop, tough times at the university, so they wouldn't let me buy a toy Emu for this. We'd come out with the Emu and he'd go, "Welcome to the Open Emuversity, out here in the open," because he'd be stood in the field. It's not the greatest joke in the world, but there's two things that come from that. The first is that in the 1970s, you could make a joke for 6 and 7-year-olds about the Open University, and they'd actually get it and they'd know what you were talking about. I think that's a wonderful piece of brand value there that we probably should be celebrating. But the other thing that flows from that, is probably more important and probably more relevant, is that we were out in the open. Everything we were doing was in the open, and because our learning would go out on TV, people would be overspill. You'd be watching Grandstand, you go, "You know what, I don't want to watch ITV7, I don't want to watch sport." Turn over to BBC Two, there's the Open University, and you suddenly do some learning in a way that you're not expecting to, in a place you wouldn't be expecting to do it, and in ways that you wouldn't be expecting that to happen. And for most people, they'd probably just move on, carry on with it. For some people, that's really going to chime. There are going to be people who would have been watching that and not going, "I wonder how he'd suit with that beard," but instead would be going, this is really interesting. I think I've got a passion here. And I bet you that there are thousands of people, there are probably people on campus whose journey to the Open University and journey to learning started just because they happened to watch something on TV middle of a Saturday afternoon. I think that's really valuable and important, and that sense that you can just stumble on learning is what drives me and is what drives my passion. And one of the ways that we try and keep that spirit of allowing people to stumble onto things, stumble onto learning, stumble onto passion, we do with OpenLearn. You probably know OpenLearn as the home of free courses on the Open University. We release 5% of everything. You'll have heard these things, these statistics many times. There's a lot of courses there. A lot of people come to do courses. They want to do our free courses. They get our badges. Some of them use it as their next step into study. Some of people use it as a refresher for study. That's great. We've also got this massive repository of learning and knowledge that's actually up on the internet and people can dip into it. And my job, and the strange title of editorial engagement, is trying to make it so that people who come along and don't yet know they're a learner can actually discover learning and start to think, actually, I'm engaging with something from the Open University here. I didn't think that I'd be able to do university level stuff, but I can do it, and that's great. So it's about spark, and it's about using open as the power to strike that spark. Because no one wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what, I think I'll be a linguist today. But they might wake up and think, I wonder what people in Hamburg call hamburgers. And that's the thing that starts them down that rabbit hole, and they go and they do a bit of searching. Hopefully they come to a site like OpenLearn or one of the other OER hubs, and they start to find things and start to build that. And suddenly they go, I'm really interested in language. Language is a passion. I want to take this further. I want to take my learning on. That's what we're there for. We're open to strike that spark. And in case you're wondering, it's fricadelle is what they call Hamburg. So what we do, what my team on OpenLearn does, is try to create tools that are open to the way that people might find themselves on the site, and open at a time where they're keen to learn, but don't yet necessarily know that they want to be a learner. And if you think about it, if you think about a film where someone's in trouble and the hero suddenly swoops in and helps them, the hero will swoop in, help them, then might give them the business card and say, if you ever need me again, just give me a call, and put the hat on and walk off. The hero doesn't swoop in and go, I'm going to help you with this fight, but first, could you give me your name and some contact details, and really help me if you could list 6 ways that you enjoy fighting, because that's at that point, it's too long, they're going to have been beaten up by the bad guys, and it's too late. So we try to take as much of the apparatus out of the way of people learning when they just come in with that desire to know something rather than have an experience. We try to take it out as much as we possibly can. So, for example, if you come to OpenLearn and you're interested in what Socrates believed about the human soul, we have a great course for that. And if you've got time and you want to engage with that, you can work your way through a course. However, if you haven't got time, you just really want to know, just tell me what Socrates believed about the human soul, we can do it with 4 stock pictures of horses and a few lines of text. Actually, it's 3 stock pictures of horses and 1 stock picture of a My Little Pony, for reasons that if you know what Socrates' theory was, would make more sense. So it's about finding the same piece of learning, but in a way that someone who doesn't yet know they want to be a learner can access that in a quick and easy way that works for them. And so hopefully after they've done that, go, what else is on this site? I wonder where this has come from. This comes from a course. Build their learning that way. One of the things about some of my colleagues, not everyone, but some of my colleagues, is that when you've got a Moodle installed, every problem that you possibly have seems to be answered by building a course for it. And sometimes that can work. Building courses is our lifeblood, it's what we do as a university. But a course isn't always the best way to present information to people. And as an example of this, we've got a cracking course on OpenLearn about women returning to STEM. And if you follow the course through, you follow it in order, you start out going, I want to reboot my STEM career. At the end of it, you complete your course, you get your certificate, you've done all the things you need to reboot your STEM career. And that's great. But do you really need to do your LinkedIn profile before you can start working on your interview technique? And what about if all you need to do is beef up your CV? Having to work your way through a course process to get there isn't the best way of doing things. So we took the course content and reworked it as a kind of dartboard. So going from the outside in, you've got things that you can do quite easily, things that are right at the centre that are perhaps a little bit more difficult and take a bit more time, and worked out in sectors. We asked people to just go, actually, tell us you've done your CV, that's okay, we'll just fill in that section for you, you don't have to worry about that. If you know you're good at networking, do the networking box now, you can skip that one if you like. If you want to go back and do that, that's fine. But people are then allowed to sort out their own way through the material. It doesn't have to be linear because that's not the nature of the material. Because we've got Moodle, we presented it in a linear way. For some people that works. But we also thought about how can we do this in a way that will be open to other people and people who might not want to sit down and do a course because all they wanted was help with their CV and to be good at the next interview. It's about being open to the way that people want to learn. And increasingly, OpenLearn sees itself as not just reflecting Open University material and Open University experience, but also providing a sense of curation and helping bring other partners' content into the site, helping people find other partners, tapping into the wider OER community, tapping into wider learning. So that when you start doing the overspill now, you're not just getting overspill from the Open University, you're getting overspill from the wider world of learning. And hopefully in that way, we can keep up with the things that Rod Holliman used to spot back in the 1970s, that actually what we're doing is out in the open, we're in a field, and people can look over the hedge and join in a way that suits them at any time. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Simon. Finally, to finish, we've got Andy Lane. Unfortunately, couldn't be with us today, but he sent a video, which I'm now, for the magic of bring up. So yeah, this is Andy on openness as an invitation to participate. Yep.
So I want to talk about openness in education as an invitation to participate. Now, we all know that open education is multifaceted, different themes and things, but over the 30 years that I've worked at the Open University, open as to people has been the most resonant part of the OU mission. Because I think it's being open to people that is really important. That's people as individual learners, as temporary groups of learners, but also as members of more permanent organisations. So open education, I feel, enables people to connect in communities or networks, provides people with an identity as a learner, it provides those people with belonging. You can feel that I am not alone while I'm learning, even if I feel I'm on my own physically, but I can still connect by other means to other people. And it also means we can learn together. This is very much about a shared enterprise. Now, within the Open University, of course, open entry has been a big part of what openness has meant. And that removes some barriers to participation. Remove all barriers. Open publication and open licensing of content as open education resources enables to remove other barriers, provide other means by which people connect with one another through that content. So I see openness as a mindset and an emotional reaction influences behaviours in here rather than being a property of content or technology out there. Over my time at the OU, I've been involved in many open educational activities. And one of them was as the original founding director of Open Learn. The design of Open Learn reflects this philosophy that I've been talking about. However, even though it is a platform through which people can access content and which they can, through other means, upload content and talk to each other, most of that socialising happens off platform and other spaces and places. But it is still driven by people more than the content. So although we talk about the content, it's how the people use that content, how that content goes out into the world and is used by different people in different ways. The content, open education resources, are merely a mediating agent for learning together, whether that be synchronously, at the same time, in the same place, or asynchronously. We upload something, somebody doesn't use it for 3 years, but then they take it, do something with it, re-upload it somewhere else, somebody else uses it. You never know what will happen, and how that content will connect people with other people through time and space.
Thanks, Andy, that's great. And I'd like to thank everybody who's spoken today as well for the fantastic talks that we've had and the diverse range of kind of influences that Open has around the university. Thanks to everyone that's joined us through the live stream and on Periscope as well. We're going to say goodbye to you at this point, but thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. And just another round of applause for everyone before I hand over to Martin for the second part of today.